that's enough of a little warm up.
Yeah.
Sort of prelude to it all. So we've got Jess Dalliday on the show today, and yeah, so really exciting to have her on. Doing lots of cool stuff. You know, you're a blogger. You've been doing that for a long time. You've got the educational background in the world of fitness and wellness, and building a really great community on Instagram. We know that you do the Pilates and teach next door and in a couple of other places, I think, around town. And you've got this Pilates on demand program, which is really cool too. So lots of cool stuff going on. You're a new mom. So yeah, what else did I miss about that as far as an introduction?
Just a few things.
Yeah, I know. When other people say it, now I understand why I'm so busy every day. But from my perspective, I don't feel like I'm doing enough ever. So, no, I think you covered pretty much everything. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Your space is awesome. So I'm excited to try a float here pretty soon.
No, we'll definitely get you in to try that out, and it's a cool experience for sure. And I think, like most people that do have some sort of wellness background of any sort, they immediately understand like the value there, and it helps to spread the word with people that definitely need it, but maybe don't know so much about what it is and what it can do for them. But yeah. I feel like this conversation, just like with a lot of our guests, can go so many different ways, and we just kind of like to go with the flow of it all. And I guess, like, just kind of, how did you get started in like blogging and like this wellness thing? I know, I suppose like before that you were kind of, it was with the schooling. I know you got degree in kinesiology as well. Is it a master's as well in kinesiology?
Yeah. And athletic therapy. So I finished my undergrad and master and then went to York to do my master's degree, where I took my athletic therapy certificate as well. And then after I graduated, I started teaching at York University, some courses there in athletic therapy, as well as working at a clinic doing athletic therapy. And then I started teaching at a Pilates studio a couple years after that, after I decided to add Pilates to my repertoire. And yeah, even though I was doing a lot of things and I was very busy, I don't know what it was. I was just constantly obsessed with looking at other people's blogs, reading their blogs, and I just loved the idea of being able to write my own blog. And at the time, I was starting to learn more about plant-based eating and how great that was for your health. And I was trying to shift more into that type of eating as well. So I just decided that I would try and start it as a hobby. It sort of coincided with about a year after my husband and I got married, and we were going to start trying to have babies. And then I ran into some fertility issues because of my lifestyle. So what I was doing, so all of the things that I had on my plate, which we already talked about, you can imagine living in Toronto, I was driving a lot as well. So that's very stressful there. Plus I was exercising quite regularly, like at least an hour every day, if not more than that. And then just my eating habits were fairly restrictive too. Looking back at the time, I didn't think they were that bad because I thought I was just eating healthy. Like I wasn't calorie counting really or anything like that. I was just trying to eat as healthy as possible, but I still don't think I was eating enough for my exercise habits. So after going off birth control, I wasn't able to get a regular cycle. So then I started investigating that and realized I had something called hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is just a loss of period or loss of ovulation because of your lifestyle. Like it's usually associated with high stress, which can be any kind of stress on the body, whether that's not getting enough calories, exercising too much, or general life stress. And you don't necessarily need to be underweight to have that diagnosis, because I wasn't underweight at the time. I was considered like a healthy BMI, which is why it was so confusing to me, and how it wasn't so common either. Like you hear about a lot of people that are suffering from eating disorders that are underweight who have a hard time getting pregnant, but you don't hear about those people that are just being really healthy, quote unquote. But anyway, so that sort of led me on this journey to sort of figure out, okay, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to kind of replace the exercise and the restrictive eating with something I guess to take my mind off of it. And that's when I started the blog. So the blog purely started as a food blog.
Okay.
And I had bought a new camera for it. So it was experimenting with photography as well. So trying out a new hobby that way. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there, where eventually I was having a really hard time dealing with the fertility issues. I guess it would have been like almost a year. No, it would have been more than a year after I started the blog. It would have been about a year after that where I finally opened up about the fertility struggles. And that's where I really found a lot of my community and felt like I could connect with everybody, like not everybody, but a lot of people that were experiencing the same thing. So that's sort of what led me down the path of kind of where I am now, with sharing more personal stories, because I realized that I wasn't alone in those. And I actually felt like a huge weight was lifted from my shoulders when I was able to share that openly. And funny enough, I don't know if it's funny, but the same month that I shared the fertility story was the month I got pregnant. So it's kind of interesting that I think, just being able to connect with other people and kind of get that support that you need could just be what you need in order to help heal some sorts of things that you're going through, or mental struggles. So
yeah, it sounds like that happens fairly often. Maybe like that's sort of like that final like dropping of the weight, that whole like burden, the stress, just kind of like, it's like a big sigh of relief. But I'll definitely include some of those links as like in the show notes, because
I have a lot of blogs.
It's definitely a valuable thing to share, because like you said, if you're not in kind of that, low BMI or certain kind of characteristics that would suggest infertility issues, then I'm sure it's difficult to like identify like how that can be, like where the issue lies, and spreading the awareness is hugely important for that.
Yeah, and it's very individual too, is what I've noticed. And that was almost the hardest part for me, was because I could see somebody who, I guess, had a similar body type to me, who's able to exercise and still be able to get pregnant without needing to gain that weight to get pregnant or to change their habits. And that was frustrating. So I know there was a lot of jealousy and resentment during that time that I had to overcome, and realize that, like now I'm very grateful that it happened to me, because my relationship with myself and food is so much better. And I'm glad I can pass that down to my daughter now, versus the old habits I had. I don't think I would want those passed on, because they clearly weren't healthy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about like how you got fertile? Like, was it through food? Was it just time?
Yeah, it was all of it. I'd say the most important thing was that I had to stop exercising, though. So it took a year before I was able to regain my cycles. But I think it would have went faster if I would have just stopped exercising. But at the same time, I don't know if I would have healed completely if I didn't take the full year and take that time to really slowly cut back until I finally could accept my life without exercise. It seems so crazy to say this out loud, but I had an addiction to exercise.
I don't know if I could do that. I was just sitting here thinking, okay. It's like, wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, so I had to stop. All I did was walk, and I did light Pilates, like nothing crazy, and then light yoga. Like they were all shorter workouts, like 20 minutes or so. The walking was usually 20 minutes or less, and not very intense, and just, really removing that layer of stress to my body. That, as well as eating enough calories. And eating any foods that I wanted. So whether they were high carb, high fat, just not having any restrictions on anything, and really retraining my brain to say that all food is okay. It's helped so much now. Like it's insane how much it's helped me. Even going through pregnancy and being okay with my body image through pregnancy, and then after pregnancy. So that was even harder than going through pregnancy, because you want to lose that baby weight or whatever, just mostly because the media tells you that you should, and trying to really fight against that and just let my body do its thing, and understand that I needed the extra weight. You need that weight to actually feed your baby. And you need to be easier on yourself after you have a baby. Like, there's no reason to jump back into the gym. Like, eventually your body will regroup and be able to come to a place where you're healthy at a healthy weight again and just not rushing that process. I think I felt a lot more at ease with myself during that process than I would have if I hadn't recovered beforehand. So yeah,
Cool.
It was a long journey, but looking back, I'm glad it happened. In the middle of it, I was not happy at all. Like, it was very hard, and I'm not going to downplay it at all. Like, gaining weight is not an easy thing to do, I don't think, no matter what size you're at. So.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. What do you think about, like, the moms that are, like, still doing deadlifts when they're in, like, weeks before the baby's born? Is it once again, is it more like an individual thing? Some people probably know themselves well enough that they can still handle it, or is there more caution that should be thrown in that direction?
It totally depends on the person. So if you were someone that was doing deadlifts before you got pregnant and that was your activity style, I think as long as you're working with a pelvic floor physiotherapist and monitoring your pelvic floor during that time, you should be fine. And I would make sure that you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing, that has prenatal training too. Just to, you really want to be cautious of your pelvic floor during, especially late pregnancy, and putting the load on that, because it's already getting stressed a lot from the weight of the baby, and then any kind of heavy lifting you're doing is putting a lot of downward pressure on that pelvic floor. And that can lead to a lot of issues like incontinence later, or like postpartum, even during your pregnancy. So I would say be cautious of it. If you have no symptoms and everything, it feels fine, you can continue doing your workout, no problem. Like, I don't think there's really an issue with staying active throughout your pregnancy. I think it's much more recommended now. But I wouldn't necessarily start into a new program once you're pregnant. And personally, during my pregnancy, I was just so sick through the first 3 months. The second trimester, I felt good enough to lift like light weights maybe once or twice a week. And then by the third trimester, I was just, my body like had shifted so much with the laxity in my ligaments that trying to do any kind of strength training just was not comfortable for me. So, and I think that had to do with me taking a huge step back from exercise beforehand. So my body just wasn't in the place to take a heavy load. And so I just listened to it. And now I'm fine, like going back to deadlifts now, I'm totally fine. So I think just honoring that stage of your life and just listening to your body through it, and not needing to lift heavy during your pregnancy. Like, it's not a requirement.
Right.
But if it's something that your body's able to do and you want to do it, go for it. But I don't think you need to. I don't think it's necessary. Like, you'll regain your strength after you have the baby. So it's not to worry about losing that strength. And I think that's, as someone that's active and liked exercising before, that's what you're worried about, but it'll come back.
Well, that's good. Something that I'm really curious about, because your Instagram feed looks amazing. The blog is excellent. And sort of like, well, both of us, you come from more of like the science background in university. So were you always very creative, or where did that come from? Was it just like over time? Because everything is like amazing.
Thank you.
And like, that's, I think, like, I don't know, it's something that we all as business owners and everything aspire to, is having that like brand that looks really on point.
Oh, well, thank you. It's so funny to hear you say that I'm creative, because I don't think of myself as creative at all. Probably because I came from a science background and like have zero art skill whatsoever. But I've really taken to photography, and honestly, I can only photograph food, like, and my dog. Like,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Because I try other forms of photography and I'm just like, I don't know. It's much harder to photograph humans. So I give anybody, like, especially babies and kids, like all those people require a lot more respect.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I started doing it. It took me a while to get the hang of it with the camera. But I really just enjoy taking photos of food. I don't know why, it brings me a lot of joy. Like setting up the scenes and just creating the actual artwork, I guess you could say, with the food. And I think it's just something different that I I don't know, and maybe not a lot of people do, so maybe I felt a little more comfortable taking on that type of photography, whereas you see a lot of like, obviously a lot of artwork of people taking like wedding photography and stuff like that. So I guess it was a little different, and I felt like I wasn't surrounded by it, so I didn't have a lot to compare to, maybe. So when I started putting it out, I wasn't constantly consuming different people's feeds of that. So I felt like I could be more creative that way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's like what we the whole theme of the FlowCast and finding your flow, that thing that you're passionate with. And I've been bitten by the photography bug this past year.
Kind of saying this is familiar.
Learning about it for business purposes as well, and trying to improve like the brand and the image that's portrayed here. And hiring somebody for marketing and media content is super expensive, so I decided to learn it on my own, and I just really started enjoying it too. And it definitely shows, like with like your Instagram grid, which a lot of, I know, photographers obsess about, and people that are in more of the more creative fields. But like just the way the website looks great too, and the content on it and everything. So I was really curious to hear that. But it sounds like what we talk about with you try different things until you find that thing that sticks as a passion. And that's where you get into that flow state where it's sometimes a little more obvious and sometimes not, but the sense of losing track of time and like that fulfillment of the challenge and everything like that. Does that resonate with you in terms of photography? And maybe also, I would guess, like originally through like exercise and stuff, you've probably learned like the foundation that kind of made it easier to transition into these other fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely with the photography, and actually the web design, which is weird.
Kent was talking to me yesterday about that. He thinks you're incredible. He's like, she's the smartest person I know. Puts together a whole website by herself, and like it's all like talk about that, because that's crazy.
Yeah, that was
you put together a mean website.
I put together 2 now.
Wow.
My first one took a lot longer than the second one because I had no idea what I was doing. I literally YouTubed probably 10 hours of video of learning how to put a website together. So I think all in, I had spent $100 on my blog to start it, because I just had to buy the domain, the hosting site, and then like a theme. And then I created the rest of it myself, and it took it obviously wasn't as nice as it is now when I first started, but over time I've been able to make edits as I go, and I really love doing that. Like, I don't know how to write any code, by the way. I look up a lot of code, copy and paste it, and put it in, and like hope to God my website doesn't crash after I do it. But so that, and then creating the Pilates website, I've loved making that too. So just trying, and I've worked with web developers as well to help with the back end. Like if I do need coding done or something to look a certain way, I have people that I can ask to do that. So, and then those people I would pay, but most of it I do myself. And I think it's because I just like doing that, and I take a lot of pleasure in it, and will spend hours and hours and not even notice the time going by. So that, and writing my blog posts, so I love doing that too. And then creating the exercise classes for Pilates on Demand, and as well as for Sweat Happy Wellness at the Reformer Studio. So those types of things, like I just love being creative with the exercise too. So yeah, I guess maybe I am creative. I don't know.
I can hear you thinking about that as you talk.
I know. I'm like, I do like it's. I guess it's just a different type of creative, because when we hear the word creative, we automatically think like artist, and you see beautiful artwork or photography or something like that. Whereas mine is just a little. I guess it's just different. Creativity.
I think like that whole. I think that concept is definitely shifting as we're there's so many more platforms to showcase your work and different ways to showcase creativity that aren't in the traditional sense of paintings and drawings and music, etc. Like there's so many different ways, and there's a lot of appreciation going into things like coding now, and so it's cool. It's good I think it's good to acknowledge that, because I've been reading this book called Creative Calling by Chase Jarvis. He's a world famous photographer. It's a really good book. But the thesis of the book is that like we all need to seek out like this creative calling. And there's basically infinite ways to do it. But that's like something that I guess is kind of his life mission, and has been for a long time, is encouraging people to become more creative, because he says it's like as essential as exercise and nutrition for wellness, for well-being.
Sure.
Yeah, I think he was on a podcast that I listened to recently, on the Ultimate Health podcast.
Cool.
Where he was talking about that and how you need to practice creativity, and it's a skill that you need to develop. It's not necessarily a talent that you're born with.
Yeah.
Like for some people, it comes a lot easier than others, but that it's something we need to exercise every day to make it better and better, like you would with actual exercise or eating properly. So that's interesting.
Totally. Yeah, that's and it sounds like that's kind of what you've gone through to develop this creativity.
Just not knowing that's what I was doing.
Yeah. I think we all, or a lot of us, do find our way through that, but you know, part of our mission here is to help people kind of have the toolkit to get there a little bit easier, or at least the know-how. And that's like Creative Calling is a great book for that too. You know, like having like a solid morning routine, and then some of the discipline that goes into the different tactics, which we've talked about, like on our, we did a time management episode, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like on the time management strategies. So whether that's like getting rid of all distractions, and you know, the digital minimalism side of it is essential for like your own creativity, and not just copying other people.
Yeah, and giving yourself the space to do it, right? Like that's the thing. Too. That's what a lot of, I feel like, we're very consumed by technology, myself included, and you really have to put boundaries on your devices and your screens so that you can have that time to actually, like, almost people are saying, like, be bored, so that you can come up with these ideas.
Right.
Yeah, or make room for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it's, you just get influenced a little bit too much by other people, and not like what's true to yourself or true to your own creativity. So do you have any like specific tactics like that? Because you know, you're doing blog posts each week, creating the workout programs, because I think Pilates on Demand, you have new workouts every week, correct?
Yeah.
So that takes like a lot of time, right? To film and to edit. I imagine is there like any editing to it, or is it mostly the planning ahead of time also would kind of go into that too, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to be very honest that has not always been very organized, but as I've gone through this and just gotten more serious about the business and the blog, I've become more organized and definitely understand how important prioritizing is. And there's still days where they're disorganized, so it's not perfect. But I think, just having a list of priorities and goals that you want to achieve, and really it comes down to like looking at almost your entire year, and then you want to look at a big picture and then breaking that down into each month, and then breaking that down into each week, and then into each day. And that's how you're going to get to your goal. Because if you don't have a goal, then it's really hard to plan your day or plan in advance. And like, I never used to do this, but now I do. And I come up with like big picture goals for the year. And then that way I can look back when I'm looking at my month, like, okay, what should I try and do this month so that'll get me closer to my goal by the end of the year, and sort of plan that out very roughly. Like, it doesn't have to be super specific when you're doing those. And then going from your week, so I'm looking at, okay, what do I need to get done this week? And then my day I can look at and say, here's 5 things that need to get done, or 3, here's the top 3 things I need to get done today. And I'll actually prioritize those from 1 to 5 so that I can work on them first. And the big thing is like not checking the email immediately as soon as you wake up in the morning. So having boundaries on that, not checking your phone. I actually have a like a screen time app, or I don't know what it is on my phone, where it won't let me into any of my apps until 7 a.m. So
those are so helpful.
Yeah, they are, because they're so annoying to get out of. That is not even worth going into my phone. So just like whatever. So I'll just play with my daughter in the morning. So I'm really trying to be cognizant of not checking my phone, especially when I'm at home with my family. And then, just working on the hard things first. So I know I always prioritize the thing I don't want to do the most first, because I need to get it done. And then working backwards to the easiest task. So that takes a lot of planning on that part. And really once you get a system going, it's not that bad. Like you just kind of either first thing in the morning, you write down your 5 things or 3 things or whatever you want to get done. And then after that, you just can do those things. And then whatever pops up during the day, you just put it in your notebook, because things will always pop up. But it's nice to have the things that are going to lead you to your end goal. So I call those the high payoff activities. Those are things that need to get done, but always get pushed to the side because they're not urgent, like answering emails and things like that. So anyways, that was a long-winded answer to that part. But going back to how I'm having to like schedule blog posts and the videos and things like that. So I have a day that I spend once a month to write the blog posts. I try to get those all done in one day. At the beginning of the month, any emails that need to be sent out, I try to get those all done in one day at the beginning of the month. And then the videos we shoot all in one day. I try to get at least 2 months worth of content done in that day. So that's why I like to bring in another instructor, because it's really hard to film that many videos back to back. So I have filmed 8 videos in one day, and I'll never do it again.
Oh my gosh.
But typically I'll do between 3 and 4, and then I'll have another instructor do it the same, so that we can have about 2 months worth of content. So I only have to film once every month or every 2 months, and I hire someone to do my video, and they do all the editing and just send me a video every month or every week, so that I can post it. So I really have like a lot of my tasks laid out during certain days of the week, so that I'm not overwhelmed and feel like I have to do everything this day. This has to go at this day. Like I know what I'm doing each day, so that it's not as overwhelming. And I did not start out this way. I need you to understand this. It's taken like 2 years to actually find a schedule that works. And a lot of that has had to do with my daughter and knowing that like I need to not be on my computer when I'm at home. So I really had to get smart and strategic about my planning. And it sucks planning at the beginning. Like it's annoying. Like I dread it. But once it's done, it's so much better. Like I feel like a weight has been lifted off my chest, because now I don't have to keep everything in my brain, right? Like I can look at a piece of paper and say, okay, this is what I had planned for this week, and this is what I'm going to do. And then I also took a break from Instagram to do this. So that's another piece that I want to say, is that I had to stop my day-to-day activities that were taking up a huge chunk of my time to take a step back and free up a bunch of time so that I could do all this planning. Because you can get really stuck in those day-to-day tasks, because they do take up a lot of time. But if you can't take the time to plan, then you're just going to keep feeling like you're just scraping by all the time and like you can't get ahead. So sometimes you do have to take one step back to take 2 steps forward, if that makes any sense. And it was hard taking that break from Instagram, but I'm glad I did it. And I realized it really had no effect on my blog or my business at the time. So it was kind of eye-opening as well.
Cool.
Wow.
That was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
I love that.
We talk about digital minimalism on here a lot. And that's like, it's as you just pointed out, it's hugely important. So, how long of like a break did you take? Because you've got a good Instagram following, and like, I know a lot of work goes into sort of cultivating that community that you've got on there, and of course it's scary no matter what level people are at as far as like their Instagram following, but there is the addictive thing with it too, that I think Instagram's kind of somewhat started to work with people instead of against them, in the way that we talked about a few weeks ago, how the likes have been less visible now. But how long of a break did you take, and like what what sort of prompted that? Was there anything that sort of inspired you to do that?
I was just not feeling inspired to be like to post anymore. I found I was dreading it every day. I would spend a lot, like you said, it takes a lot of time to actually get the post out. And I usually take time to write long captions because I don't know why. I just
you like writing.
Yeah, I do like writing.
You like providing that value and everything, right?
Yeah, so it was just taking a lot out of me every day. And I found, especially because I was at home with my daughter and she would nap for like maybe an hour in the morning and I would get that time and that's all I would get done that day. And I was starting to feel like this doesn't make any sense to me. Like I shouldn't be spending all my time doing this. So I took a break to sort of reset and figure out a strategic plan for how could I make better use of my time. So that was really the motivation behind it. And yeah, I just wasn't feeling super motivated anymore. That was really the only reason I took the break, was that I needed to be smarter with my time. And that's exactly what it did. And it also taught me that I think I was addicted, and probably still am to some degree, to seeing those likes, and it's easy to get caught up in that because it gives you such a good dopamine hit if you see your post doing really well. Yeah. But on the flip side, you also feel like shit. I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but I just did.
It's okay.
We've been getting a little bit more loose as time goes on.
What? When they,
I don't think we're like catering to teen, like very young audiences.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. It's not.
But if your post doesn't do well, then you feel terrible. And that was the other part of it, is that it's so hit or miss, and I don't like putting a lot of my mood or my self-worth into something that's so uncertain and so up in the air. And I'm going to relate this similarly to weighing yourself every day, because that's something I used to struggle with, where one day I would jump on the scale, I'd be down a pound and be so happy for the rest of the day. Then the next day I jump on the scale and you gain a pound, and then you feel like crap the rest of the day. And it didn't matter. Like, your weight's going to fluctuate regardless all the time. But the same thing happens on Instagram. And like, I have no idea what's going on with the algorithm and whatever. It's always different every time I post something. Yeah. So that I don't like that aspect of it, is that I'm not sure how it's going to do. And I don't like putting, my worth into that. So that's why I need to, remove myself from it a little bit and just give myself that space and know that, okay, this is just, I'm really just here on the platform to serve other people. If one person reads it or 1,000 people read it, it doesn't matter, because it's really, I'm just here to help people. And that's what I have to keep coming back to. It's not about me. It's about everybody else. And that's why I'm there. So just really trying to remember that message and tell myself that when sometimes things don't go as planned, or when you think a post is going to do really well and it doesn't, and just knowing that the purpose of the app is like, what is it for really? And and knowing that once I took that break, it wasn't really a big deal. Like, nothing really changed that much, except I felt more present in my own life, which was nice. So
that's power, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's interesting listening to you, because I think just the past while I've been listening to lots of rising entrepreneur podcasts and just the people we have on here, and a big theme is that Instagram break. Like, I've seen it a lot, and people, they're just taking a minute to regroup and remind themselves, like, why am I doing this? And it usually comes back to that, like, I'm here to help people. Like, it's not about the numbers or the analytics. It's not about that. Like, and even I think that's our mission too. Like we were just talking at the beginning, it's not about those numbers rolling in per se. It's just about reaching people and creating community, and I think that's great. But it's neat to see. I'm quiet on this podcast because I'm just listening to you, and I'm like, man, you're a well-oiled machine.
Totally.
Like, it's so inspiring for me. So thank you for sharing all this stuff. But it's neat to see your theme is just kind of like, I like pulling themes. That's always been my thing. It's just listening and being like, this is cool. You seem to always take a step back and reflect and see, like, okay, how can I tweak this? How can I tweak that? Even with your like year planning, your day planning, like how does this fit into that puzzle? And I think that's really cool, because that's kind of like, as we talk about creativity, it's creativity in the sense, like, it's not freeform and crazy, but it's like it's this cool, it's like math in a way, how math can be creative, just like putting all these puzzle pieces together to create this really awesome mosaic. So I don't necessarily have a question to follow this. I just think it's really cool, and I'm inspired, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and for anybody that feels overwhelmed by all of that, because I know it can be very overwhelming, just know that it doesn't have to happen overnight, and you don't have to wake up tomorrow, plan your entire year, and then your month and your week. Like, it takes a long time. Like, at the end of the year, I always review my accomplishments of what I accomplished that year, because I think, and I honestly think we should all do this, no matter how big or small your accomplishments are. It's really important that you acknowledge them, because that's something I never used to do. And now I try to do it more often than every year, but I definitely make a point to do it at the end of the year. Look at everything I've accomplished and see just how far I've come.
It's so important.
Yeah. And then look at, okay, what did I achieve this year? Did I meet a lot of the goals I wanted to? And probably not all of them, but that's fine. I probably met some of them. And then I can move those goals, or they might have changed for next year. And then I like to look at that big picture, especially at the end of the year and the beginning of the next year. And then just slowly working on my months. I usually do my months by quarters, so I don't do the whole year at once, but I'll look at the first quarter, then once I'm getting close to the second quarter, I'll do that. But I'd obviously love to do the full year, but things change so much throughout the year that I can't plan for what's going to happen next December already. That's a little intense for me. I know some companies probably do that, but right now where I'm at, I'm just looking at the next 3 months ahead of me and just saying, okay, how can I make the best use of my time here and make sure I don't forget something important or capitalize on an important opportunity at some point. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I like that you threw in another, often mentioned concept here, or theme, is the whole idea of gratitude. And it doesn't have to always be those big wins at the end of the year. I think that's super important. It's funny, I was actually just like last night thinking about like how much my life's changed in the past year and the past 2 years. That since I moved back to Peterborough, and yeah, it's good to like review that regularly, and also, but not just the big wins, but the small wins too. And like, they don't even have to be necessarily wins. And I wrote, I know when we were talking to Laura, it was when I had just released a blog post that I was kind of thinking about, and the concept of like the gratitude of something in the present moment, and somebody in the past that you're grateful for that relationship with, or getting to encounter, or whatever it may be. And then the third component is maybe looking forward towards a goal, but just kind of like, finding that balance with also the things that aren't as like, I guess, type A driven towards some sort of end goal. It's all about finding the balance with those things. And the other thing that I like that you mentioned is you don't always accomplish everything in 1 year. And I forget if Tony Robbins says this or if he just repeats it from somebody else a lot. But the idea of like, you overestimate what you can achieve in a year, but underestimate what you can achieve in a decade. And remembering that, and like not getting overwhelmed or upset if you reach the end of the year and maybe not everything's been accomplished yet. But there's so much time that we all have, regardless of your age, because of our knowledge of nutrition and health and wellness. Like, we're living longer, and we're promoting like the idea of living healthier too, right? So so you've got a lot more time.
And just to add on to that, I really like the saying, I don't know who said this, but you overestimate what you can get done in a day and underestimate what you can get done in a year as well. So I always take that, because we are so quick to make our to-do list like endless every day. And then we feel bad because we can't get it all done in that day because we run out of time. So just being more realistic with maybe picking like 3 priorities to work on each day. And then if you can get to the other stuff, you can, but then moving it to the next day. And then when you look at your year at the end, you realize like each of those little days, just doing those 3 tasks every day really got you to this huge point at the end of the year. And I always try to think back to that. It's like, okay, if I don't do it today, it's fine, because there is tomorrow to do it tomorrow. Hopefully.
With all the with all the
fingers crossed.
With all like the planning that you do, is it on paper or is it?
Yeah, I do my my quarters on Excel, and then I have like a little agenda that I write my day-to-day stuff on paper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that, like, I don't know, we hear way more often than not with our guests and ourselves, and despite all of the fancy, like, flashing
there's so many
app versions, like, there's no better productivity tool than
just writing it down. Yeah.
And
well, that's just psychology at the end of the day, right? It schematizes it in your brain better to see it and feel it when you write it out, and then you can act on it a little better than having a bright light in your face.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I do use, digital tools for kind of the bigger picture organization as well, just because it becomes too overwhelming to write it all out.
And then because you're making changes constantly to it, it's easier to just edit it online.
But the day-to-day stuff still on paper is a good way. And the other thing I like with that is it's much more permanent when you go back to look at what you've accomplished. And that's like that's part of the concept of like the whole bullet journaling, is that you actually have it on paper. You get that like sensation, that feeling of accomplishment when you get to cross something off from your like to-do list. And then when you look back, or if you're having like a rough day and you're not feeling very confident, you look at what you've accomplished, and if you go through like a piece of paper where it's permanently on there, and you're like, oh, I did accomplish a lot, and I am really good, or whatever,
I know. It's a great confidence boost. That's why I love writing 3 things instead of 20.
Yeah.
Because you feel way better if you can accomplish 3 things and that was all you wanted to get done that day. So.
Yeah. The 3 to 5 things, like you had mentioned earlier, is like across the board one of the number one things that's recommended too, for avoiding getting overwhelmed and for actually getting it done. But I also like the prioritization, and in reverse order is really interesting, because I don't hear that as much.
That was neat. Yeah, I like that, because
that's sort of, I think that's important, and I fall away from that a lot too.
It's like eating your favorite thing last as a kid.
Yeah.
I appreciate this.
Yeah, because it's so easy. Like, distractions come up every day, or emergencies will come up. So working on the thing you don't want to work on first, just it makes it, well, you usually have more energy and motivation first thing as well. And you have, for me, I work better in the mornings, like my brain just fires faster. So I'm likely to get that task done faster too, and not be interrupted or be tempted to look at my phone or distracted at that time. So it's most likely to get done. And then the other things, I'm more motivated to do them because they're easier, right?
Yeah.
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 It's hard though. I know it's hard when you actually have to sit down and do it.
I think that might be the hardest part, is just starting. Right?
Yeah.
Just getting started.
Yeah.
But once you do, then it usually works out.
Yeah, that's a quote I like, is just start and then the pressure's off, and that has really helped me. Just being like, okay, go.
Yes. Yeah, it's usually the fear of anticipation that's worse than actually doing 100%. The thing. Yeah, and I've always found that, and that's what I've sort of taken as a motto in my life, because before I sort of delved into the self-development world, I felt like I didn't act on a lot of things, and now that I have really immersed myself in it, I know that if I start something, I feel much better than I would if I procrastinated and waited till later to do it, and it's usually way less scary than I think it's going to be.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's better dopamine than the Instagram hits too. I think.
It's
really, at least to me, as like a
it's long lasting.
Type A person, just crossing that off. That's good.
Yes.
This so like the whole journey then. What sort of inspired you to go about, starting your own business and everything? Like, clearly, like the ability to plan really like well and then execute is a huge asset to that. But as you said, it took time to figure that out. And what was it like? Was it reading a lot of books, or how did you kind of come about this desire to do your own thing?
I don't know. I think it really started with the blog as I just wanted to start one, because I always find that if I'm looking at something and almost like being jealous of somebody else for having something, that's usually a sign that I need to go do that thing. Because I I want what they have or something like that. I don't know what it is, but I would see so many blogs and I would think like, I really want to do this. Like, I just know I can do it. So it was just speaking to me for so long. And then this was right at the time that podcast started coming out a couple of years ago, or it became popular. And I started listening to a podcast called Earn Your Happy by Lori Harder, who I've seen in person now because she's been like my inspiration. And she just had so many motivational podcasts, and it really just drove me to say, you know what, why am I waiting? Like, I might as well just dive in and try this out. And I really enjoyed doing that aspect, and really, I don't know, I guess I just enjoyed working on my own agenda, and I've always been really driven and self-motivated.
Yeah.
I've never really needed external motivation to do things, which is nice. But then also on the flip side, you can become an overachiever, which has its bad parts. But mostly it's serving me well. So yeah, I just sort of ran with the blog. And then when I moved here from Toronto, I had to leave a lot of my jobs. Obviously, for the commute was a little too long. And I started teaching Pilates here and just realized that a lot of my, I guess my market of new moms, which Pilates is great for, they weren't able to come to my classes because they had babies. And now I know that it's really hard to leave the house when you have a child. And I find, especially in this area, because there's a lot of country and rural areas, it's hard to just drive to a class because it takes sometimes 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back, and that's an hour of time plus the workout. So it just made sense to bring it online. And I realized there were like no Canadian Pilates online, like subscription model type of companies. So I thought that it would be a great market to tap into. And because I have a lot of training in kinesiology, athletic therapy, like I have a lot of rehab, I guess, background. I think it gave me a little bit of a competitive edge in that regard, and that my videos are going to be very safe. And like my instructors, I know have a lot of credentials as well. And I also have pelvic floor training, which is something that's not super common in a lot of online videos.
Yeah.
And again, new moms need that. And it's really hard to get access to that depending on where you are. And just the education piece, a lot of people don't know about it. So I had a physiotherapist from Pulse Physiotherapy, Leah. She's a pelvic floor physio. So she did an educational piece for me that's on the website.
Cool.
So yeah, it's really, again, about getting what I have. Like, I knew that I wanted to share the knowledge, the information I have in just a more efficient way. And I knew I didn't want to be driving around the city teaching classes everywhere, especially because we were starting family. And I just knew that lifestyle before it wasn't serving me. Like, it was tiring. Yeah, it was too much on my body to be doing so many things. And as a Pilates instructor, it's really hard to make ends meet by just teaching classes. Like, it's any kind of fitness instructor, you might have to work multiple jobs, and it's really hard to get one full-time steady job somewhere that's going to pay all the bills. So just trying to be realistic about that too, and like how I could make this something that's going to work for me long term too.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. That's like it's, I don't know, it's bringing it all together, the business sense, like seeing an opportunity, the creativity behind it, and it looks awesome. Like, that's super awesome. So I'm glad that we're able to, mention that and touch on that, because I think and I hope like a lot of our community will benefit from that. So I'm definitely gonna use this as one of like the hero clips this week, so that we can kind of share this thing in particular, because whether people listen to the whole podcast or just something that we can put on social media, because it's I love it that it's like, it's something that you've created that is a very untapped market.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Right.
So my question for you, because you say not super like extrinsically motivated. Like you have it inside you, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But who inspires you, and who's your mentor? Like, what are you listening to podcasts? Do you have people in your life? Like, who's
so many podcasts
who's getting you going?
I think you said on your website you're a podcast addict, and you're not ashamed of it.
No, I'm not. I love it. Oh my God, I listened to a podcast on the way here. I can't remember. Oh yeah, it was Lori Harder again. So she's a big one. She was probably my number one go-to. I forget. One of my clients in Toronto actually met her at a retreat and told me about her, and then that's when I started following her. And
what's her thing? Is she business? Is she lifestyle?
She's all of the above, but mostly it's like self-development. Cool. And so her podcast is called Earn Your Happy. If you're looking for it, it's just all motivational. She has her own business too, and she's a public speaker as well. So yeah, she's been awesome. Rachel Hollis is another big one. Her and Tony Robbins listen to their podcasts a lot, and
she's going to be at the Power of Success.
Oh, I'm going there.
I am too.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, I'm so excited. My husband got me tickets for it for my birthday.
Nice.
So I'm pumped about that. Jenna Kutcher is another one. She just gives that so much information on her podcast about business and Instagram and all. Like, I love being able to get that knowledge while I'm driving, so I don't have to spend extra time researching it. And so she's been really helpful in that regard. And then she's got a lot of like positive body image posts as well, so she's really good. The Healthy Maven is another one that I look up to. She's from Toronto, lives in San Francisco now, started her blog probably about 5 years before mine, and does it full time, and it's just been interesting watching her journey through her blogging and how it's changed and transformed. And she recently left Instagram app like for good.
Oh wow! Because
she realized it wasn't serving her the way she wanted it to be. So it's really neat, just like having these different perspectives. And I'm trying to think of someone else who I listen to. There's the Ultimate Health podcast is good too. That I just love learning about health. So it's more so they dive into like nutrition, exercise, mental health, like everybody. So it's a really good, well-rounded podcast. And the girl who hosts it used to work across the street from me in Toronto. Cool. So I think I just had the connection there before. And I just love podcasts. I love books. I don't know. I'm just constantly, when I'm not working, I'm just I actually listen to like talks on YouTube and Brene Brown. She's another good one while I'm working to keep me motivated. So it's interesting that I am intrinsically motivated, but I have this constant desire for these I guess motivational speakers just to give me that extra boost and remind me that it's okay if I'm not I guess like if I have bad days or if some things aren't working, that they will get better. And it's just, you have to just keep working at it, and inevitably things will work out for you if you keep putting in the effort. And I think that's something that we might lose nowadays, that there's so much of this immediate gratification and we see overnight success all the time. That's not realistic. It's the day-to-day. You've got to work at it all the time. And all these people that I'm mentioning, they've been around for years and years, and they've been doing stuff behind the scenes long before they become in front of the scenes. And just remembering that and knowing that what you're doing right now is actually going to help you get to that next level, although it might not feel like it, that if you keep working hard, like you will get a result. Like it's inevitable. So
totally.
That's just like fitness. Like the more consistent you are, and the more, like, as long as you keep doing it, you'll get somewhere. And
that's, what you just have to apply to your whole life.
Exactly.
And I think we lose sight of that a lot. So I think it's good to remind yourself. And that's why I listen to my podcast, to remind myself.
It's like your little community.
Yeah, exactly.
You work alone, right?
Yes.
It's your coworkers.
My imaginary coworkers.
Yeah, that's great.
I also liken it to, I've got the concept of like the virtual mentorship. And so that's what I sort of associate that all with as well.
Like that.
Is even though, it can be expensive to actually have one of those in-person business coaches or mentors, but there's so many opportunities to essentially get it all for free through podcasts and books and blogs and even following certain people, strategically on their social media. You can really like have them as part of your community and as like a mentor. And I like that kind of idea a lot, because it brings you that drive and motivation and that reassurance and all of the above. Yeah. It's very cool. Is there anything else that we...
man, I feel like normally we ask for like actionable advice at this point, but I think you've just been like dropping it down the whole way. So I don't know.
I guess I can leave you like the listeners with just like a piece of advice is, I think, to give yourself some grace, because that's something I don't do enough myself. So maybe this advice is for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, just not being so hard on yourself, and know that you will get there as long as you keep working hard and knowing that you're doing your best each day. And some days your best might just be getting out of bed, getting your kids at the door and making them food. And then other days you'll have great days and you'll be able to crush it. So just knowing that there are seasons in life that are up and down, and giving yourself grace in those down seasons, because without them, like, you can't appreciate the good. So know that they're there for a reason. And yeah, I think that's what I would leave everyone with.
That's great.
Awesome.
That.
Thank you. I'll make sure to include your blog and all of that. And everybody definitely check out Jess's stuff, because she's crushing it. And check out Pilates on Demand if you haven't been into the Reformer studio next to Flow Spa. You can get it online too.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Jess.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm excited to try a float here. Tap into my creativity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, that was awesome.